Many of you know my name is Jo Hancock. I'm a professor in the Department of Design at the Westfall College of Media Arts and Design. And I come from one of the hidden gem, I call it the hidden gem of the department, which is the design and merchandising program, where I was birthed at Drexel in 2004. We are the largest program in the Department of Design, leading the charge in interdisciplinary practices and diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. We have been doing this since day one. After all, we are the program that educates students about consumers. We were recently the recipients of a wonderful new lab called the Design and Merchandising Immersive Media Lab. This gift would have not been possible without tonight's guest, Michael J. Edwards. Mike is wonderful. He helped us to promote the program when we first began the graduate program 5 years ago. We are celebrating our 5th birthday, and we are very proud. The program has been very successful, but we kind of roped Mike into doing our first ad for the program, and he did it in stride. Let me introduce you to our guest this evening. Mike Edwards is a strategic retail and e-commerce executive with 35 years of experience leading industry, publicly traded and privately held retailers through major billion-dollar transformations. Skilled in driving optimization across digital marketing, merchandising, sales, and technology, Mike is focused on driving long-range growth that is sustainable, data-driven, and customer-centric. Tactile and visionary, Michael has repeatedly aided in the sale and repositioning of companies falling victim to slow top-line growth, major profit losses, over-leveraged balance sheets, and underutilization of technology, even amid cybersecurity crisis and global pandemic. He has most recently served as president and CEO of Hanna Andersson, an international children's lifestyle brand, and ebags.com, online luggage and travel accessories business. Prior executive roles were CMO at Staples, Borders Group CEO, Lucy Activewear CEO, and Jo-Ann Stores COO. Industry recognized as a transformative business driver, Michael has served on numerous boards of directors with organizations, most importantly, Drexel University. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Business and Marketing with Drexel University. Over the last decade, he and the organizations under his management have received the American Heritage Award from the Anti-Defamation League for leadership and commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Brand of the Year for Lucy Activewear from the International Council of Shopping Centers. Entrepreneur of the Year finalist for Lucy Activewear from Ernst & Young, and Customer Service Award of the Year with ebags.com from the Multi-Channel Merchant. Mike is also responsible for this speaker series. We are very fortunate to have him and for his sponsorship of this program this evening. His guest is Mr. Matt Kaness, and he is currently the Chief Executive Officer and Board Advisor of Goodwillfinds eCommerce Inc. as of September 2022. The social enterprise is comprised of a re-commerce technology platform and second-hand marketplace under license from Goodwill Industries International, Inc. Previously, he was a member of the U.S. Advisory Board of Afterpay Limited from 2018 to 2022. Matt served as interim chief executive officer of Lucky Brand Dungarees Incorporated, one of my favorite brands. He was the president and chief executive officer of ModCloth Inc., a fashion e-commerce company from 2015 to 2017, which was sold to Walmart. From 2017 to 2018, Matt was an officer in Walmart US e-commerce division. Previously, he was the chief strategy officer at Urban Outfitters Inc., an international fashion and lifestyle omni-channel retailer. Matt holds a BS in mechanical engineering from the Catholic University of America and an MBA from Darden Graduate School of Business at the University of Virginia. And it is my pleasure to introduce to you Mike Edwards and Matt Kaness. So welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Great to be here. Thanks.
All right, Joseph.
Yes.
I'm going to kick it off and we'll get going.
Okay, perfect.
Little known facts are is that Matt and I grew up about a mile from each other. I grew up in Langhorne, Matt grew up in Yardley. But our paths have been slightly different, but a lot alike. Really the premise for tonight is to focus in on the customer experience aspect of what we're seeing in terms of the ongoing retail, whether it's omni or it's direct to consumer or some other type of channel, and how significant it is in today's marketplace. And I just thought I'd maybe take a quick way back. I put it up here that I graduated in 1983, and the only reason I did that is just to get credit for how young I am at this stage of my career. But no, I'm just kidding. What it did trigger me is, if you looked at 1983, the year I graduated, there wasn't one retailer anywhere close to the Fortune 50. The only things that really existed were department stores, a lot of mom and pops, a few discounters, but mainly oil companies and car companies ruled the world. In 2022, all of a sudden you start to see Walmart move to the top, Amazon creep up, CVS move up to the top, and Kroger move up to the top. And then fast forward it to this year, and from a market cap standpoint, Amazon's number one, followed by Walmart, followed by Home Depot, followed by Alibaba, followed by Costco. And these are some of the largest market caps in the world, and they all essentially serve a consumer, not a customer or a B2B customer. The other piece I want to make sure we cover tonight is that 77% of all customers today are searching on a mobile device. About 50% are now purchasing on a mobile device. $30 billion was spent last year in digital marketing. With that said, brick and mortar is still 4-to-1 of online, which shows you that online will continue to be much larger as we go forward. 54% of all customers want problems solved immediately, or will not shop the brand again. And there's 79% of the customers are familiar and comfortable shopping online today versus only 20% in 2000. So that, for me, gives us a little bit of a overview of where this retail consumer journey is going. I think the next slide I'd like to talk through. This was sort of the most disruptive strategy ever mapped out on a napkin, introduced to the world in 1994. And the author of this document is Jeff Bezos. And Jeff Bezos had a view of Amazon that as long as he could always provide the best selection, have the best brands, give a customer a reason to return, have a great experience, lower prices, and keep costs down, that would always be in style and always be in need of today's consumer. And at the time, I can speak with great deal of experience with this, is that as the former CEO of Borders Books and Music, at one point Borders actually partnered with Amazon to run their fulfillment, thinking that Amazon never would really amount to much. And the one other brand, when you rank them, that's remarkably consistent and follows this exact model is Walmart. And this was always Sam Walton's what he preached and what he believed. And it is those type of consumer companies that we're seeing really continued market share growth. Tonight I'm not going to talk about taking costs out of product or pricing mechanisms or what the assortment should look like and why, or brands or not the brands, or even marketing, that segment of customer experience is really the piece as a e-commerce executive that you really have to become obsessed with. And sometimes people confuse the customer experience with customer service, and they're really two different things. The experience is the overall experience you have working with a company or a brand, and service is generally defined by how they handle when you have problems or immediate needs. CX automation is now becoming almost $100 billion market opportunity in the global marketplace. And it's estimated that over $400 billion was lost to having poor experiences while they're shopping with brands globally. So it's just something to think about as we walk through. If you're running an e-commerce company, where would you prioritize? And I'd say today, CX is extremely important. If we go to the next slide. So if you think about the channels of retailing, back in my day of graduating, there were really one or two. There was a Sears catalog, and there was department stores, and there was a few emerging discount stores. Today, the channels are all independent. So if you're shopping on a mobile device, that's considered a channel. If you're working on your site on your laptop, that's a channel. If you're on Instagram and you buy something through Instagram, that's now a new channel. There's direct advertising that is considered a channel as well, such as how does TikTok bring you in, or what are the other mechanisms? And then obviously the retail stores are a channel. And everyone is used to talking to contact centers, but many of us have had a really tough time with contact centers because of staffing and training and long wait times. Email, we're used to emailing or buying through email customers, and many of us have loyalty programs, which again becomes an enabler to buy. And just a very, very simple map here, because sometimes the touch point for a consumer today is upwards of 50 to 100 times before they actually purchase. This model just shows 7 times of coming from social media onto a website, back to the website, looking at the assortment, checking it out in the store, being reinforced by the advertising, then ultimately selecting it, putting it in the buy box, and clicking through to the purchase. And this is a very common experience. But now if you think about these channels and you're managing a company, and your company is open 24/7 if you have a website. So anywhere in the world that I want to shop, I'm expecting the same level of service wherever I am, whatever time it is in the day. But it's almost improbable that you could have every one of these channels adequately staffed to manage that frequency of the customer contact and engagement. And that's where, when we start thinking about sort of CX automation, a lot of things, or possibly 80% of a lot of the transactions coming through can be automated. Where's my order? I want to place a return. Did I pay the right price? All the standard questions that every call center has, those are typically the top 3. And then you get into, if they come through to a live agent, can we make that a great experience? Can we sell them our product? Can we tell them about the company? Can we get back to them with a follow-up email? So chat boxes are being automated. They're doing upsells. They're problem solving. It's AI based. It's personalized. And everywhere you come in contact with that customer, you're getting generally immediate responses and a satisfactory answer. And that in itself makes shopping online easy, simple, and hassle-free. And today's customers, millennials, Gen X's, are completely comfortable with do your own support online and like it because it's faster and more efficient. The next slide I'm going to walk you through is everyone has a dashboard in terms of how we're thinking about the customer experience. A lot of these are marketing. There's some pure e-commerce stats you could put on here as well. For me, on the e-commerce side, it's not on here. I'm constantly looking at speed and conversion and checkout abandonment. But if all those things are working seamlessly and a customer is buying, then they're going to definitely give you a high net promoter score, meaning I'm most likely to tell a friend or recommend your company or brand to someone else. Customer satisfaction is just what that says. Everything went great. Everything delivered on time. I got what I expected. It was the quality I expected at the right price. Churn rate is something that you obviously want to keep low, because if as your customer database starts churning your best customers and your funnel isn't strong enough, this ultimately brings your growth down to zero. Retention rate is the same with your customers. Lifetime value of the customer, coupled with cost of acquisition, are probably the two most looked at statistics on a digital marketing dashboard. And then there's the customer effort score, which is how much effort did it take me to actually solve my problem. And I think we probably have all experienced that, whether we're calling Southwest Airlines or we're trying to get something repaired or get technical support. And all of a sudden we're on to our 6th phone call and we haven't been able to resolve anything. So, but all these things ultimately drive conversion, bigger basket, greater return, lower product returns, and a better economic model for the omni-channel player and or working with the direct-to-consumer brand. If you think about all these ratings and what's implied in CX automation or really solid data analytics, it's really inherited on great data, great AI, but most importantly, delivering a personalized experience that makes sense. And I'll give you a really simple example of running a children's apparel retailer. Is that if I send you an email and it has all boys wear in it, and you have 2 girls at home, you're a little insulted of why did you waste your time? You can go through any category and you can't have misses like that. You have to talk to the customer and make them feel valuable and that you know what they want and you're being predictive in helping them think through that. It kills me to go into a restaurant. You've been there for 5 times and they don't remember your name. It's exactly the same thing from a digital perspective. The next slide I want to walk through. So we have our KPIs. We're making the investment in all the channels we talked about. We have all the right SaaS players in place to help us improve various aspects of the technology. And just so you know, when you land on an Amazon page, there's usually about at least 90 technologies working in play the second you land on that page. And they're all motivating you in different ways and helping you buy quickly and efficiently and get what you need. But obviously, retaining customers is everything. I was looking at acquiring a online company in London last year for a company that I'm on the board of. And they went from 0 to almost $80 million in 3 years. And it was dog supplements, very profitable. And we were really enamored with this. We were getting close to buying. until we really dug into the customer retention, and we realized their customer retention was less than 20% after a year, but they were spending 55% in marketing to drive the growth, which meant that within a few years, that profitability could go away and the company's value could drop in half. And we made that evaluation on that one statistic. Improve customer satisfaction. I think, there's obviously multiple ways to score that, whether they just shopped you or they're on your call center or we're asking for product reviews. But obviously very, very critical. And then increase cross-selling and upselling. I think that's the key. And you think about what's a great cross-selling opportunity. If you're shopping for apparel and you walk in the fitting room and they haven't at least brought 7 items with you and put them outside the door, they're not going to sell a lot of apparel. So it's the same with online. If you look at Amazon's conversion rate is about 8%. But they typically are adding, upwards of 3 to 4 additional items in every single basket through recommendation engines, through special pricing that comes up, through shipping offers that drive, upselling. And all these things, if they're in play, it means I don't have to bring one more customer in, and I can improve the overall performance of our company and very profitably. So, a lot of times, in the marketplace, things get pretty hyped up on the chat or the sort of the growth for growth's sake. We're growing all these customers, we're spending all this marketing, but we're not doing it profitably. And that's flipped post-COVID to where there's a very different expectation, which is I got to really earn my customer and keep my customer. And Matt, maybe you have some examples too, I know you do, of what you've experienced in your career.
Yeah, Mike, thanks. I think you're hitting the bullseye on all of these topics, and it's such a rich discussion. We could go on for a while, but what comes to mind, I'll just share a few quick stories that I think brings to life what you're highlighting. Early in my career, I was a full-time consultant at Burton Snowboards, and talking about customer experience, Burton had a program called Learn to Ride that was for young kids on the mountain to learn how to snowboard instead of ski. And they invested a ton of money, ton of their marketing budget went into that, which had next to no immediate sales impact. They also hosted the US Open before Winter Olympics sanctioned snowboarding, or when X Games was still kind of a fledgling event. And so they were giving the best riders who were pushing the boundaries of the sport and leveraging their technology a place to showcase their talents and really build kind of athlete community in this new extreme category. And again, that drove next to no sales, but it was creating community and these experiences that were pinnacle for this wide range of demographics that they viewed as their target market, that allowed them to establish the brand position, that allowed people to understand what Burton stood for without speaking to it, because now they had people talking about the brand on their behalf without the brand having to do it. Fast forward to today, and as Mike's saying, a lot of this is now being done by AI and technology. And when you're doing this online versus in the physical world, it's all measurable, right? So I think the challenge in 2023 and for this new generation is, how do you keep the balance between this like inspirational vision and this aspirational brand position and this experiential way to create a brand platform for all your various target segments, with the ability to leverage technology and leverage data and in real time, really drive your business. So you have to be able to go back and forth between, kind of the artistic and the creative, as well as the quantitative and the analytical. So that's the first thing that comes to mind with respect to how to even define customer experience. The second thing that comes to mind is your point about why do customer experience. When I left Urban Outfitters and got to ModCloth, one of the things that I immediately identified was that we had this, and for those that don't know or remember, ModCloth was one of the pioneers of online fashion e-commerce. They did a nice job at being one of the first to integrate regular and plus size fashion in the women's category. And then when I was there, I was hired to then as CEO to scale that business and introduce it to a larger market. And we had this really high retention rate amongst our top decile of customers, meaning the top 10% of customers in the active customer file. They drove more than half of our sales. And so spending time getting to know that group, what we realized was that we could leverage this ravenous group to tell the story of ModCloth to other customers and invite them to be more engaged in the customer experience by promoting their UGC, leveraging their reviews, asking them to be influencers on our behalf, and all these things that were back in 2014, 15, 16, pretty pioneering in the social commerce space. And the result of it was year over year, we grew our sales from repeat customers faster than new. And that allowed us to leverage down our cost of acquisition. It allowed us to be much more deliberate in our brand messaging and not have to be so promotional to drive conversion on new customers. And so all these secondary and ancillary positive effects that came from that, because we focused growth by going deeper with our best customers first and not just focusing on, okay, we have to find a way to extend what we're doing to a new audience online. And then the last thing I'd say, Mike, is what I'm doing today at Goodwillfinds.com, where we're building out a re-commerce platform and a secondhand marketplace that allows all the Goodwills in the country in a distributed manner to sell online and compete with ThredUp and RealReal and Poshmark and Depop and Etsy and all these other marketplaces that have sprung up over the last 5 to 10 years. We're leveraging AI right now to recommend initial pricing on these unique goods, to come up with product descriptions and metadata in our PDPs and product listings, to be able to leverage in customer service and take on a lot of the engagement and interactions and exceptions that are common use cases through text. In personalization, as people come back to the site and we get to know their shopping habits and what we show them in the sorts. So it's really powerful when you can bring the combination of a strong brand position, a really deep understanding of your best customers, and leveraging analytics and the latest technology to compete and innovate around customer experience to drive your business.
Yeah, 100%. I'm actually, this is a good transition time to flip it back to you, Matt, and then the two of us will come back together toward the end here and open it up for questions.
Mike, what can I speak to specifically, or do you want to open it up to questions now and have a dialogue?
I think we could open it up if you'd like.
Well, one thing, Matt, can you explain to everyone, like, literally what Goodwillfinds is? Because a lot of people don't even know about it, what's going on with it, and I found it phenomenal when I went on the website. I would tell everyone right now, start looking at the website. It's a phenomenal venture. So can you talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, thanks, Mike and Joe, for the opportunity to share the story around Goodwill, the mission, and Goodwillfinds, our latest venture. Maybe for the benefit of the audience as well, maybe I can give a little bit of history that kind of led me to this venture.
Absolutely, please do.
Yeah, and as Mike mentioned, for the record, I grew up in Philly, then moved to Yardley. So
Oh.
we're pseudo neighbors from Bucks County, Pennsylvania, but Philly roots on this guy, which is where Drexel's at. So there's an affinity there. And then I used to work at Urban Outfitters, and the founder there, I believe, is still on the one of the trustees on the board at Drexel. So, and I had two cousins go through Drexel as well. So I've always been a big admirer of the school, and I think how the school has really evolved and built out the programs there has been fantastic. Thanks to loyal alums like Mike. So it's really great to be here, even though I'm not a Drexel alum. I'm a big fan of the school. I've been in digital commerce for going on 20 years. There's 5 to 10 year boom bust cycle that happens. 95 to 2000 was web 1.0 and the dot-com bust. 2000 to 2005 was really kind of the rise of like catalogers going online and leveraging e-commerce to drive more traffic to their call centers, like the Sears catalog. 05 to 10 was the rise of web services and PayPal and Shopify, and kind of the technology was getting built out. And then coming out of the financial crisis, you had the deal sites and Groupon and Gilt Group and all of them for 5 years. And then 2015 to 2020 was web 2.0 brands like Allbirds and Warby and ModCloth, where I was for a bit, and Bonobos, and those brands born online and leveraging wholesale pricing to sell direct to consumer. And I tell you right now, this 5-year period from 2020 to 2025, I think of as the period of marketplaces, right? Like you're really seeing marketplaces scale because it's just so much more capital efficient from an inventory management perspective, and being able to aggregate demand to leverage down the cost of acquisition. Which is part of what drew me to the opportunity at Goodwillfinds, is to be part of a venture where we're building out a new marketplace. And it's happening everywhere, not just in the secondhand category, but in every category. You're seeing marketplaces win. Urban Outfitters has tested a marketplace. Walmart has gotten into the marketplace game. Target has launched a marketplace. So, I mean, it's really become pervasive across retail, this idea of bringing in third-party brands and vendors into your marketplace, a la what Amazon and Alibaba has done for decades. So I think for me, when I think about the history of retail, and specifically the 25 years of the commercial internet, I think about it in these 5 to 10 year boom bust cycles and where we're at. And so when I was considering joining this new venture, I got to know some of the folks at the Goodwill Network. Goodwill is a 100-year-old nonprofit. The mission is to transform their lives for the dignity of work. I have a personal connection to that from a family member who is disabled and works. And as I got to know the impact that the Goodwill Network has, $6 billion in revenue collectively last year, so massive scale. But more importantly, 250,000 individuals were either job placed or job trained last year. 3.8 billion pounds of goods donated and resold, diverting it from landfills. So a massive sustainability story. And so when I joined pre-revenue employee 2 at the end of last summer, the strategy was for this new venture from the Goodwill Network to rapidly scale a catalog of curated donations from various Goodwills across the country that sell better online than in store, because we can capture more margin and value by selling it online one-to-many versus one-to-one in the store. And then that would drive more net proceeds and value back to the local Goodwill where those items are donated, which then funds the social services that I referenced. And the more successful we are growing our marketplace, the more items get diverted from landfills, which is good for the planet. The more the individual Goodwill sellers that are on our platform have to hire folks to do listing and warehousing and pick, pack, and ship, which is a higher value add, higher skill, higher wage job. And so in my mind, we are pioneering a new model for circularity in the retail industry, fully distributed, not a managed marketplace. So we're not centralizing items. It comes with a bunch of engineering challenges about how do you scale logistics and warehousing, but luckily I'm a mechanical engineer, so I get excited about those types of opportunities. But really what we're trying to do is to allow the Goodwill network to kind of take their rightful place online. They're the OG of store thrifting. We want them to be the preeminent online secondhand marketplace in the US at scale. And I'm friendly with a lot of the founders and execs and operators at these other secondhand marketplaces, and they're all thrilled that we're in the market because it's a rising tide that lifts all boats. And Mike will tell you from his experience, especially on the store side, the more concentration you have in a category, the more it attracts customers, the more you're able to drive density and volume. We're trying to do the same thing in this category by getting more and more consumers to consider secondhand, to shop with a conscious and think about purpose driven shopping. And as we do that, I think we're going to see even faster growth in the category. I believe secondhand grew 8 times faster than total retail last year, projected to do 50 billion total this year. So it's there's a momentum story at play as well, which I'd be happy to talk about. But yeah, it's a fun new venture for me, and most importantly, we're getting the word out about this amazing mission and participating in the circular economy.
So Matt, I had a question on that. First off, I think it's like super inspirational because apparel is the #1 filler in most landfills in the world. And everyone says they're doing sustainable apparel and so forth and so on. But using organic cotton doesn't mean it's sustainable. It's certainly a good practice, but if it ends up in a landfill, we lost. So, I think that's pretty awesome. The thing, I think the struggle, it sounds like you're gonna have, because it's a unique model, but doable with today's supply chain and technology, is that no one cuts you a break when you're starting up and you're building out a model and you're creating a new marketplace and going through all the complexity of that.
Yeah.
They still land on your site and experience your brand and judge you against an Amazon or what other great brand experience they had. So if one store doesn't fulfill or that product was out of stock, you get a ding. So how do you scale that kind of growth but keep that consistency of the experience in place?
Yeah, Mike, a couple of thoughts. One, retail is humbling as a career. So you have to go into it, with the expectation that you're going to disappoint people occasionally, and sometimes a lot of people occasionally. And as a startup, we launched with an MVP that was not necessarily ready for scale. And we were so surprised at the consumer reaction that we're still underwater responding to the surge in demand that we got post-launch. And there's a lot of negative sentiment that you get through your customer service and social channels. And so my approach to that is always to just, approach it with humility, say when you make a mistake, try with appeasements, but I think people care more just to hear you say, yes, we messed up. Yes, it's our fault. It's not your fault. We care about getting this right. Give us a second chance.
Yeah.
We used to, at ModCloth, some of our best customers and our longest active customers were folks that had a bad initial experience, and they were so overwhelmed at how nice the team was in our call center sales that they not only gave us a second chance, they told everybody how amazing the people at ModCloth was. And so we're taking a similar approach here. The other thing I tell you is that in a marketplace model, and this is something that I'm learning, you really have to be hyper focused on liquidity and balancing supply and demand. And that's something different than when you and I were working in vertical brands where you're managing your own design studio and sourcing operation, supply chain, and you own all the inventory. In this situation, you are managing an ecosystem.
Yes.
So you really have to have collaboration and a sense of joint ownership with your sellers to work on the right metrics, be completely transparent, and have a joint roadmap that you work on to iterate and improve the customer service levels, but also make sure that the brand promise that you're putting out into the world matches what you can deliver on.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we did after we launched at Goodwillfinds.com is I told the team, put a banner on the top of the website that says, we're experiencing delays from a surge in volume. It might be up to 10 days that you get your order, because you have to, in this day and age, people are smart and they'll figure things out. So you lead with transparency and authenticity. And I find that for the most part, you get rewarded for it.
Yeah, 100%.
So Matt, can I clarify a few things for our listeners? When you say sellers, are you saying all Goodwill locations? Are sellers the Goodwill stores? They're not necessarily individuals, correct?
Yeah, Joe, thanks for the clarification. So there's two types of marketplace models, broadly speaking. There's the managed marketplace where like RealReal and ThreadUp, which is a consignment model where you send all the goods into one central location, and then they manage it, they sell it, and they fulfill it, and then they give you whatever the agreed upon commission is on that item if it sells. And then there's the distributed marketplace, which could take various forms. Poshmark and Depop were peer-to-peer. So you're building kind of like Etsy, where you're building tools for sellers to not just sell, but also to market their storefronts. And so the sellers are the individuals who are also trying to build their markets. In our situation, the distributed model is we are integrating with individual Goodwills that already have e-commerce operations selling as 3P sellers on eBay and Amazon. So if you go on Amazon and buy a secondhand book, it's probably coming from a Goodwill.
Yeah.
So they already have those operations at the donation center to separate out items to sell for e-com, but we're integrating in a 1P integrated direct-to-consumer model with them. And so when I say sellers, I'm referring to those individual Goodwill operations. We launched with 4 from across the country: Colorado, Milwaukee, Chicago, Seattle, and LA. There's 155 Goodwills across the country, individual member organizations. So our plan over time is to welcome as many or up to all of them onto the platform, because we're all serving the same mission. We're a 501c3 like the members are. And so that's what I mean by seller. And so our model is a little bit unique compared to the other distributed models in that it's a B2B2C model versus peer-to-peer.
And I'm going to ask you another, and I want anyone to jump in that has questions. I'm kind of trying to get the ball rolling with questions. I have can you reveal to me? So I actually, after meeting you, went shopping, and I was like, okay, I want to check this out. What is the markdown strategy? I'm like, to me, this is Goodwill, right? And then there's a sale category. I'm like, how do they determine what goes on clearance at Goodwill? Like, that was fascinating to me. Like, I was like, how does that happen? So can you tell us what that is?
So Joe, the merchandising strategy for Goodwills in store is completely different than what we're doing online.
Okay.
In store, what I've learned is that items are priced to move. It's more than half apparel.
Yeah.
And don't quote me on these numbers, but they're roughly trying to turn the donations that are sellable 12 times a year, meaning once a month, they're trying to move an item through the store.
Right.
And if it doesn't sell, they'll pull it out, and then they have a whole wholesale recycling program that they engage the market on to be able to then keep the items turning. And so it's priced for sell-through for high turns. A lot of the Goodwills, when they are on eBay or other sites that are auction based, they'll put the items up with a, call it a 3 to 7 day auction period, because again, they're trying to drive sell-through, but they're accepting in that situation as well as in store lower prices.
Okay.
We're trying to balance sell-through with margin capture. So we're holding items for up to 90 days before we cross-list or delist or tell them to redirect it into a store, which is different. We're also a fixed price model. And so we went from 0 to nearly 200,000 unique active items in the digital catalog in 2 months. So that's, 200,000 items is already one of the biggest specialty secondhand catalogs online in the US. And so there's no way you can do that manually. So we're leveraging AI to scrape the web, to leverage intelligence based on the inputs that are created at the time of listing to recommend prices, and then the sellers are then accepting the recommendations. And then our job is to make sure that we're providing liquidity. And so at the category level, we're making decisions on, like you teach in your merchandising class, right? Looking at velocities and looking at what's on hand versus seasonality. And so the team's making those determinations as to how often and how deep are we driving markdowns until we get through the selling period. And then at that point, if it's not selling, we'll cross list it somewhere else, or we'll delist it until the Goodwills to sell it through the store. We're still early in the model, and over time we'll be able to make it more sophisticated at the category level, at the price segment level, at the customer segment level. But yeah, when we launched, we were surprised as well that the AI recommendations had pricing all over the board, right? And we were all embarrassed by it, right? Because we wouldn't do that if we were selling 2,000 SKUs, but when we were selling 200,000 SKUs,
Yeah.
You're not merchandising at the collection level, you're merchandising at the system level.
Well,
right?
I'm amazed. You guys have everything from like dollar vintage to Chanel at, Chanel handbags at $1,300. And I've just been very impressed by looking at the website on how well it's presented. And I do like the fact that even when I went onto the website, today, there's a lifestyle message immediately about exercise and fitness that's very, trend right. After the first of the year, I'm going to lose that 10 pounds. And I just think that this is presented really well. And I think it's probably been a huge challenge for all of you. But I was just curious as to the ideologies of pricing, because like you and I talked before, the pricing, it's all over the board. And I think it's probably a hard thing to do. And my other question to you is, since you're working with Goodwills that are across the United States, right? So you have one in California. Do they price higher, have a tendency to price, like, do different regions price higher? Like, California versus Colorado versus, the Midwest. Do you see that regional pricing that's impacting sales, or no, everyone's pretty much in line with each other and kind of price is the same? That to me is interesting.
Yeah, it's a good question. We're leveraging the Einstein AI capability within Salesforce's platform, and they're scraping the web. So I would say it's one market intelligence that's inputting into the pricing algorithm. Over time, at the category level, based on the profile of demand nationally, like where the customers are coming from and what they're willing to spend, we'll be able to figure out what is the clearing price for a set of attributes within each category that might introduce some regionality. But I would tell you it's a national market with national prices to start. And then the variances will be based on the types of donations each region gets.
Okay.
So I'll give you a for instance. Like every week I'm in our collectibles category, like looking for sports memorabilia. And I don't know why I keep searching for Philadelphia sports teams, but we don't have the Philadelphia Goodwill on the platform yet. And I'm like, why is it all Lakers and Chicago Bulls? It's like, oh, duh. Like, we're partnering with the Goodwills there. So I think over time, as we bring more Goodwills on and we have a broader national coverage, that will also kind of even out, where we're collecting donations from across the country that will reflect kind of the broad demographic that is U.S. households and the profile of a typical donor. But what I tell you is that from the consumer perspective, you go into your local Goodwill at a thrift shop, and in certain categories, it's much better experience online. I think apparel is a much better experience in store when you're able to find the time to go and pull it off the rack and touch texture and try on fit, etc. That being said, to be able to shop one Goodwill store or to shop what's going to be 1 million unique items that's donated from across the US is to augment your local in-store thrifting experience, to me, is just a massive value add for shoppers in this category. And the fact that we're turning it so fast, I'm really excited about when more consumers who don't think about Goodwill online discover us and start shopping our site. I think they're going to realize that it's a market of one compared to other secondhand marketplaces.
Well, you have mint collectibles. I'm like, that's what I'm really impressed by. Like, some of these collectibles are like mint condition. So the fact that they're selling them, it's just amazing. The whole thing's been amazing to me just to look at. Does anybody else have any questions? Any questions? No?
I have a question for anyone who would be mid-level career or just coming out of college and looking in fields entering the retail space and kind of catching some, as you've alluded to, some of these headwinds of how AI is going to affect the market. What skills and attributes can people start gearing up for any of the coming changes, I guess, in the next 5 years or so?
Mike, want me to take a shot first? You want to go?
Yeah, go ahead. And then I'll weigh in on that one. I like that question.
Is it Phil or Philip?
Philip.
Philip, okay, great. Thanks for the question. And I speak to a lot of folks who are early in their careers, both on the technology commerce side as well as the fashion and retail side. And what I try to frame up for them is to really think about what segment and type of customer do you want to obsess about? Because in retail, it always comes back to where is the customer taking you and how well are you serving them compared to the field. And so I've found that myself, I've not been drawn to go into luxury. And when I was at Walmart, as much as I loved what they were doing, competing with Amazon, and I really respected the culture, and you could see the DNA of the founder story internally as far as wanting to bring a middle-class lifestyle to rural Americans, like that DNA was still there, decades after he passed. I just love this specialty category. I love this specialty customer where you have to be sharp on price, but you're also differentiating based on experience and branding and product innovation and service innovation and following trends. And that's where I found a career. At the same time, I've been very aware of kind of what are the mega technology trends. And I've gone from wholesale to e-com through mobile and social coming online to working in pure play e-tails. I did some consulting for a SaaS company. I'm now working in a marketplace. So I think you have to be aware of both, and then the other thing I would share with you that I share with others is early in your career, it's really just about the quality of people you're working with. Like don't over engineer where you get started, right? Just find operators, merchants, brand creative leaders, technologists, financial wizards, like whatever functional area you're interested in, just find people who you can learn from, who want to see you be successful, working in a business that is where you're learning and you're winning, and you're learning what winning feels like. And if you don't have that, go find it somewhere else. Doesn't matter how big or small the company is. And then once you start to build some experience in understanding what you could be good at, then I think it just starts to compound and snowball, and then you start to find opportunities that you wouldn't necessarily have seen before you got started. Mike?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I've always never really defined my career about a particular track. I always was more of more took a look at the opportunities, and typically the ones that no one wanted were really the best ones for me. So, I started as a merchant. I spent a good part of my career being a buyer or merchant in a traditional sense. But at one point I decided, if something happens on the operating side, I want to do that too. So I went and did that, and then something else opened up in the real estate side. Well, I don't know anything about commercial real estate, but I'll go do that. And then I always start to do online. Well, okay, I'll do that. Well, we have a position in marketing. Can you help us? Sure. And I was I thought that actually I was deluding myself. But more of my willingness to take up an assignment and produce the right result that got the management above me excited and show I could lead a team. And as the more general roles opened up at the vice president level and beyond, then it was a more natural fit for me to take on those positions, because I sort of knew how things worked in the company, and I could get things done. But it's just a lot of risk taking, and I think Matt and I's career are the same and different, where I've worked for really big companies like Target and Staples and those kind of companies, and I've worked for $7 million startups losing $7 million a year, and going from a staff of 500 to a staff of 5. It's a different skill set. But here, in that, the company I'm alluding to is my first CEO job, which is called Lucy Activewear, which was running neck and neck with Lululemon for a long time. We sold out to VF Corporation. Lululemon went public, but there was a category there everyone said was really stupid. They're like, who's going to buy yoga pants? Like, there's not a market for that. What they were missing out is that it wasn't a sports brand, it was an active brand. And the reality is that I took over that company. I left a job making $600,000 a year and next in line to be the CEO, and worked for free for my first year, and then put $1 million of money out of my house in to fund our first 2 rounds. And then sold it for $110 million 3 years later. So it's one of those things that I've gone right to the edge of going bust, or hitting a lane and moving up quickly by just working harder than everyone, to be honest with you. This is a business that's about hard work, analytics, detail, and really understanding from a 360 perspective what's going on.
Yes.
And there's a company in China, I think it's called Stein, SEIN. They just broke $10 billion. They've been in business for 4 years. The 2 people started the company were computer engineers. They've never had a merchant in their company. It is entirely driven on data and analytics. They can literally produce 1 or 2 items from anywhere in the world and ship it to the consumer. And they put 2,000 to 3,000 brand new product SKUs on their site per day. And you talk about where Amazon and Target and everyone else is, and all of a sudden you see this company come out of nowhere. They'll probably will be the largest market share company in China in time. And there's another shoot off of that was the kids brand, and they're now doing almost 400,000 a year within 2.5 years. And it took Hanna Andersson 45 years to do 190 million. So you put this in perspective, I tell you that technology and knowing everything thereof is the key to it all, because consumer retailing, whether it's omni or direct to consumer, it's a technology ecosystem of delivering experiences and products and services. And the more aware you are of what's available from a tool standpoint, and the more expertise you gain there, the better you do. And I'll just close out here and say, this is the same advice I gave both of my daughters when I graduated a couple of years ago. And my one daughter works in London now for a very hot ad agency, and she only has one job, and that's to manage TikTok for all the hot brands that are emerging in the UK. And that's a job. So, and it's just, and my other daughter, she's more in the sustainability, climate control, getting her master's in that science. And my philosophy to her was the same, was the world's going to need climate change for a long, long time. I don't think you have to worry about being unemployed. We're just on the crux of how big the consumer revolution will be, driven by technology. We're not at the end. We're in a transition.
Yeah.
We're in a transition globally. So don't read the US press too much, because it doesn't tell the whole story. So, I think having a mindset of, I'm a consumer advocate and I want to deliver on the best possible experiences will take, and I can make you a lot of money, is always valued in every company.
Yeah. Thank you, Mike. And thank you, Matt, for this great talk.